the birthright. If God called us out of the world, what world then did he call us into? Because you know we're not just hanging. We're not just in limbo. So if he called us out of the world, what world did he call us into? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Scientists call it the subatomic realm. That is the realm where we can't see, but all the little atoms and particles and stuff are going on that affect our lives and we don't know it. And you're going to hear that door all night. That's that wind. That's the wind blowing. So the scientists call it the subatomic level, but we know it as the kingdom of God. That's what God called us out of the world into, was his kingdom. So that tells me that there are two worlds operating simultaneously. We got a world of outward form. We got a world that's inward form. We got a world that's visible. We've got a world that's invisible. We got a world that's temporary. We have a world that's eternal. And yet they both coexist. So it's like we have a choice, don't we? Which world do we want to live in? The world that he called us to, or do we want to stay where we are? The thing about these two worlds is they both have their own set of laws, don't they? The world has its laws, and you have to abide by that. But the kingdom also has laws. The thing about that is, if you're in the world and you're trying to get blessings from the kingdom, you cannot be in the world and take advantage of the laws of the kingdom, and vice versa. You cannot say you're in the kingdom and then get all mixed up in the laws of the world. That's not going to work either. So we have to make a choice. Every day of our lives, we make choices. Every moment of every day, we make choices. And I told you how in the subatomic world, we in the past would think that the circumstances, the things that come in our lives, the people that come in our lives, they affect us. That's what we've always believed. But scientific studies that I've been sharing with you for weeks on end have shown us that it's just the opposite. What we have inside of us affects the world we live in. That's a part of your spiritual birthright. But most of us don't realize that. We think that we are victims of time and chance, and that we fall prey to all these situations and circumstances that come into our life. But I'm here to tell you it's just the opposite. Anything that God teaches you is the complete opposite of what the world has taught you. So this is spiritual transformation lesson number 11. We're still on the spiritual transformation. I want you to realize that when you focus on something, when you watch something, when you observe something, and when you focus on it with a passionate feeling of faith, you can change whatever's going on in your life. Let's look at Matthew 13. And what I'm going to do, we're going to look at Matthew first, but I want to start with that. And then we're going to go to Genesis chapter 25. And we're going to dissect that story of Jacob and Esau. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, I got your Bible. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. My tablet wasn't working. So Matthew chapter 13, verses 11 and 12. And it reads as thus. Is everyone there? Okay. 13, 11, and 12. Matthew 13, verses 11 and 12. Now I want you to read this, and I want you to really think about the implications of what Jesus is saying to his disciples. to his believers, to us. He says, well, they asked the question, why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered and said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. Okay, that's the two worlds we're talking about. There's a world that God has chosen to give you the mystery of the kingdom, and then there's a world that he says, no, he decided not to give them the mysteries of the kingdom. See what I'm saying? There are two places you're operating from. He said, for whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. We're going to be talking about abundance. He said, but whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And we're going to see this played out in the story of Jacob and Esau in Genesis 25. Notice he had said that he who has. Remember the verse that says, when you pray, you believe that you have them, and then once you believe that you have them, it will be given to you. See, that ties in with that. So he who has, he who is able to pray and believe that he already has, not going to have, but living in that now, he said more will be given to you. Isn't that wonderful? Amen. But we have to learn to walk in that principle. And most of us don't. It sounds good, but we're not living that. Some of us are. Some of us are not. So let's go to Genesis 25. And I want to show you that God is constantly making a distinction and showing a difference between different people and how he operates and interacts with them. And then I want somebody to look up Hebrews 12:16, and we're going to read that in relation to Genesis 25. And we're going to start with verses 21. And we're going to read all the way to 34. And I'll read that. Is everyone there? Okay. It says, now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But the children struggled together within her. And she said, if all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord. That's a good question. That's a good question for us to think of. If all is well, which God says all is well, she's saying, why is it like this? Why is there a struggle within me? Why is there turmoil going on within me? That's what she was asking the Lord. See, we got to take these stories and look at the inner meaning. We know she was with child. We know she had twins. But something was going on the inside of her that made her ask the Lord, Lord, if everything's well, why is this going on? Have you ever asked the Lord that question? Lord, now you said that all is well with me. You said I am a child of God. Why is this happening? That's basically what she was saying. But look at what the Lord said to her. And look at what the Lord is saying to us. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 natures are inside of you. That's basically what he was saying. 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. 2 natures are inside of you. He's saying that's where the turmoil and the struggle come from, because the 2 natures have not reconciled. They're battling one another. One of your inner parts wants to be with the Lord constantly. Another of your inner parts is of this world and of the flesh. It wants to satisfy the flesh. So it's a constant war going on inside of you. You think your problem is everything out here, and God is saying your problem is in here. It's with the struggle that's going on. You want to do one thing, but you do something else. You desire this, but you do this. That's amazing. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau, which means red. And after his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So the boys grew. And Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. Now we learn in the New Testament, Jesus interpreted what the field represented in the parable. He said the field is the world. So it says Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the world. But Jacob was a mild man dwelling in tents. See, he had his dwelling in the tent of God's presence. So see, there were two different natures, but they came out of this one body. And they were totally opposed, diametrically opposed to one another. And it says in verse 28, and Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. It said Esau came in from the world, and he was weary. Don't you know the world is going to hammer you and make you weary? The world is going to break you down. And so it says he came in from the world. He came into Jacob, who represented the spiritual part of himself, and said, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright as of this day. And Esau said, look, I am about to die. So what is this birthright to me? Then Jacob said, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate, he drank, he arose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. That's what we're going to be talking about today. The birthright for Esau was not important. It was the food. Something he wanted to satisfy his weariness. Now, in Esau's case, it was food. In our cases, it could be a number of things that the world has done to you and have beat you down. You have become faint. You have become weary. You have become hungry. You have become thirsty. And all you want is something to satisfy that physical deprivement. Nothing spiritual, physically. You want to be okay physically. So the birthright to him was not important. Give me the food. But notice, Jacob, he esteemed the birthright very important. He esteemed it more than anything else. He said, this day, give me your birthright. So it lets me know that he knew something about the birthright, or he cared more about it than his brother did. He esteemed it valuable. He esteemed it beyond measure. There was nothing could compare to it. He wanted it, and he bargained for it, and he got it. I got a question for you. Have you sold your birthright? Do any of you in this room know what your birthright is?
No, I don't know something to say.
Good. And we're going to talk about that. Anybody knows about their birthright? Anybody knows what they are entitled to? Because if you don't know what your birthright is, you will be just like Esau. You'll sell it. You'll give it up. You'll trample on it. You will ignore it. Nobody raise their hand. Good. So this is a good lesson. What exactly does that mean? What was so unappealing or unimportant to Esau regarding it, and how does the birthright apply to you and I today? First of all, let's look up the definition of birthright. And it's really not a big definition at all. All it says is the privileges and rights and blessings of the firstborn. That's it. A privilege, a right, and blessings of the firstborn. So back in those days, the firstborn had special privileges within the family. He received special family blessings, which meant spiritual, social leadership, and a double portion of his father's possessions. So that means even though the other family members did get some of the possessions, the birthright son or daughter received a double portion, or twice what the other family members received. And so it also means that the birthright is you have rights, you have advantages. Now, he already told you in Matthew 13 that he has chosen to reveal some things to you that he has not chosen to reveal to the world. That's a right. That's a privilege. So you have the upper hand. You have a responsibility to use that birthright to be a blessing to others. And another thing it says, it means preeminence and authority. Okay, there's that word authority again. So God has given you authority over what you say. Do you know you have authority in this world? So you know that, right? Are you using your authority? Sometimes? Mm-hmm. Good. But then it says you are the progenitor of the Messiah. Progenitor. That means a person that is descended or originated from something greater. That's who we are. That's who exactly we are. We have originated and came from something magnificent beyond our comprehension. That's a special right, and that's a special privilege. So their mother had a bad pregnancy. Some of us right now, men and women, because of the twins that are struggling and fighting within us, what we're about to birth, we don't know. We don't know what we're about to bring into manifestation. It's a struggle. It's a fight. We don't have no idea. But Esau and Jacob represent two nations of natures. They cannot coexist in peace right now. They represent two forces that are in this world. And we said that Esau symbolizes the body, the flesh, the material world, who has not been tamed. That's an untamed nature. Some of us are walking around saying we're Christians and believers, but that nature, that fleshly nature, that carnal nature has not even been tamed. It still is the stronger one. It is still the stronger brother. It is the twin that is winning the battle. The flesh is. Remember when Donnell was talking about in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2, he talked about that wilderness experience, and he talked about why God took us in the wilderness. And the thing I want to focus on is he said he wanted to test you, and he wanted to know what was in your heart. Now, we know he knows what's in your heart, but he wanted you to know what was in your heart. So we're back to this heart again. Remember I said the heart has the strongest electrical and magnetic force in your body? Let's look at some verses that talk about the heart. And this is really important. I'm going somewhere. Look at Jeremiah 17, verses 5 through 10. Jeremiah 17, 5 through 10. And a lot of us are very familiar with this verse. It's one of my favorites. And this is, again, there's two worlds. There's a contrast. Thus says the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart departs from the Lord. See, that's what happened with Esau. His heart was not connected to God, but Jacob's heart was. What it says, what happened to that person? It said, he shall be like a shrub in a desert. He shall not see when good comes. See, Esau had something good and didn't even know he had it good because his heart was not connected to God. He said he will inhabit the parched places in the wilderness. That's what we were just talking about. In a salt land which is not inhabited. Now here's the contrast. But blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord. He shall be like a tree planted by the waters. Continuous nourishment. His thirst is always quenched. It said his roots will spread out by the river. This person will not fear when the heat comes. How many of us, when that heat is applied, so much fear, so much anxiety, so much worry. But look what he said, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. Its leaf will be green and will not be anxious in the year of drought. It will not be anxious when it seems like you have nothing. It will not be anxious when your cupboards are bare. It will not be anxious when you're short on paying your bills. It will not be anxious when you're dealing with an illness. It said, nor will it cease from yielding fruit. But look at this. It said the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Isn't that something? Your heart is desperately wicked. And it said, who can know it? He said, but I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the reins, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. Now I want you to keep in mind Jacob and Esau. Keep in mind there are different reactions to the birthright.
Okay, Donna. Wasn't it wrong for Jacob to trick about his birthright then?
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Because I had the same question. I said, well, Lord, now, that's a puzzle to me.
Yeah.
Because it said that he got the birthright by deceit. But that's why I'm really focusing on this heart thing.
Yeah.
Because the heart thing, I'm telling you, is what moves this field that's around us. It's that heart. It's the feeling. Jacob wanted that so badly. He was focused on it. His heart was in it. He desired it above all else. That's why he got it. But it did say deceit. But we'll go there. So the heart, that's what we got to focus on. The feelings that come from the heart. You know, we always say, I love you with all my heart. You know, I used to always watch, what's the name of that show, John, I watch all the time. You say I shouldn't be watching it. You Are Not the Father? Who is that? Maury Povey. John get mad every time he said, you watch this whole stupid show. But the thing about it is, do you notice how many times they always say, before they get ready to break the news that they've been unfaithful, you know I love you, right? You know, I mean, they all say it every single time. You know I love you with all my heart. And then, bam, they hit them with something like that. This is what I'm talking about. That's the spirit of a Jacob. It is not true feelings. It's not coming from the heart, because if it was coming from the heart, you could not do that to anyone that you love. That's what I say. People say a lot of things. But it says here, he tests your heart. He tries your reins. Now, this is what got me. In the King James Version, it mentions reins, R-E-I-N-S. So when I thought of reins, I think of the horse. When you're riding a horse, isn't that the reins that guides the horse? But there are so many verses where he says, I see the reins. In Jeremiah 20:12, he said, I see the reins. I try your heart. In Revelation 2:23, God say, I am searching your reins. Psalm 7:9, he tries your reins. I'm like, what is this reins? So I looked up the word rein. And I was just shocked by what I saw. It says, the rein is a kidney. I'm like, a kidney? As an essential organ. It's figurative of the mind as the interior self. So I'm like, how did we get kidney from the Lord searches your reins? So I'm like, that don't make sense to me. But then as I kept on reading about kidneys, it says kidneys perform the function of highly specialized filters. Kidneys are filters. They selectively purify the blood. They eliminate impurities. So it's the process of filtering out anything that is detrimental to the body. So in spiritual life, and that's why God used that word, it is something in you, the reins, that you're supposed to be filtering out and purifying. Pastor White said all the time, it's something we are supposed to be doing. See, and we're talking about working on ourselves. That's what he says. We have to be like the kidney to eliminate certain things out of our system. It says all substances that enter the bloodstream have to pass through a selection process. So it is the internal ability to detach from and eliminate disagreeable facts and situations of life, such as past behaviors and thought patterns that do not align with the demands and needs of the present time. Now, I would never have got that if I hadn't looked up that definition. Reins. How we get from reins to kidneys? And then knowing what the kidney, the function of it is. And it is inside of you. And spiritually, it's telling you, this is what you have to be doing. Purifying yourself. That was just amazing to me. Exodus 11:7 says, he told the Israelites, again, he's making a distinction. He said, I will make a difference. I will make a distinction between my people and the Egyptians. That is going on all the time. He's separating us. But we have a purpose in that separation. It's not like we depart from the world and ignore it. We depart from the world and operate under the blessings of our birthright to bring the world to the place that we are. But if we don't know our birthright, and I'm going to go over some things so you will know for sure what your birthright is when you leave here. What did God say? He said he was the light of the world, right? But didn't he say the same thing about you? He said, you are the light of the world. That's a privilege. That's a distinction from all the other people in the world. Jacob, Esau, which one are you? You got to understand which spirit is operating. Which one are you giving the more power to? So if you are the light of the world, it said light is a medium of energy by which we perceive our environment through our eyes. So light and vision are connected. So in other words, how is your vision? Remember I talked about that. Do you really see what God wants you to see? Most of us so busy seeing what this world wants us to see, we're blind to what God wants us to see. Again, what else did he say you are? You are the salt of the earth. Now, most people, when we think of salt, the main two things I always hear, they say we are to preserve. Salt it preserves the things that is sprinkled on. And also salt makes things that would not taste as good taste better. So I've always heard that we are supposed to make Christ palatable, something that people want to eat, something that people want to try, something that people want to digest. But also one thing I learned about salt was salt is not more so what it does. What is salt? What makes up salt? It says salt is a neutralizing agent formed by the combination of an acid and a base that react with one another, namely a positive and a negative component. There we go again. Do you see how there are opposites in every situation? We're still talking about Jacob and Esau. We're still talking about that carnal nature and that spiritual nature. But it says when these two react to one another and agree, they become something beautiful that other people can benefit from. A positive and a negative. And we always think of negative as a bad thing, but when it is interactive with something good, it's a good and beneficial. Who does not like salt? This comes from you. You're the only one. And raise your hand, John. But most people like salt. But that's because it makes what it's affecting more desirable. Now, this is what I noticed about Esau. Esau despised the birthright, didn't he? He didn't want any part of it. Yet, what did he want, though? He wanted the blessing from the birthright. Yeah, he wanted the food, but he gave up the birthright, which was tied to a blessing. So he didn't think the birthright was important. But when he found out that that blessing that was meant for him went to his younger brother, he had a fit. He begged. And let's read that. I told somebody to read Hebrews 12:16. Anybody look that up? I'll go there. So see, that's what we don't understand. The birthright and blessings are tied together. We don't want the birthright, but we want the blessing. Boy, if that's not, what did I say, Hebrews 12? Mm-hmm. Hebrews 12:16. And it says this, it says, let's look at 15. It said, looking carefully lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled, lest there be any fornicator or profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place for repentance, though he sought it diligently and with tears. Now, notice this. The blessing, he fought for that. But the birthright, he didn't think that was important. But you can't give up the birthright and think you're going to get the blessing. Saints, we're doing the same thing. Most of us here say we don't even know what our birthright is, but we always want the blessings of God. We are no different from Esau. We're selling our birthright. We're esteeming it like it don't mean anything. But yeah, Lord, I want to be blessed by. No. He said, here, the birthright. You got to understand what that is. And the blessing will automatically flow because of it. So quit desiring the blessing like Esau and desire the birthright.
So you finna tell us what the birthright is?
We're getting there. We have plenty of time. We're getting there. That's good. See, I got you wondering now. That's good, like a good movie. I want to know what's going to happen at the end.
And the birthright is Jesus Christ.
Oh, sure. What part of it? Everything.
Because if we don't lean toward Jesus and what he left for us to live by, then we're of the world, and the world is no good to us.
Exactly. And that is so true. But we got to break it down because we've heard that. We know that it's Christ. We know that everything is hidden. All the wisdom and the treasures of the world are hidden in him. But we got to break it down where it's more practical. Where you can say, I understand now that this, and this is my birthright. And I got to start living. That's where I'm going tonight. But you're absolutely right. It is all in Christ. Let's look at Genesis 27. Let's go back there. And we're going to be looking at verses starting with 34. And this is the scene where he found out about losing the blessing. Verse 34 said, when Esau, let's start with 33. Then Isaac, trembled exceedingly and said, where is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him. And indeed, he shall be blessed. That's what God is saying. When you understand your birthright, and he puts that blessing on you, he said, indeed, you shall. It's like, it's not coming back. His gifts are irrevocable. You cannot give a blessing and take it back. And that's what he was saying to Esau. I bless Jacob. And indeed, he is blessed. Do you know that you are in that same line of Jacob, Abraham, Isaac? You are in that line. You are blessed. You are a receiver of those blessings. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. That is a scene of a man in deep, deep sorrow and pain and agony. This man cried like a baby because he knew the implication of that blessing. Where beforehand, he didn't know that they were tied together. He thought he could still get the blessing, but he didn't understand he couldn't get it because he sold the birthright. Isn't that something? He said, your brother came with deceit. Now, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, Mike. That's what the father said. See, the father said your brother came with deceit. And that's how he looked at it. But we always say, God is in control. It was meant for Jacob to have it because Jacob had the heart. Jacob desired it with all his heart. And he did what he had to do to get it. What are you doing to get your birthright?
Okay. But if you don't know what you don't have, if you don't know about it, how could you? I mean, if he knew.
He knew about it.
Okay, at first he said he didn't know. You say he didn't know nothing about the birthright.
No, he knew the family. In those days, everyone knew what the birthright was. But he didn't tie it in with the blessing. All he was focused on was the blessing. The birthright, the firstborn. He thought he could still get it because he was still the firstborn.
But he didn't know. If he knew it then, he probably never would have sold it, right?
Yeah.
So how can you see?
But he esteemed it of no value. See, nobody can trick you out of something that you esteemed of high value.
But if you don't know, how you know? If I don't know no better, how you gonna get it?
Everybody in them days knew the birthright.
Okay.
But he said, listen to what he said, remember? He said, I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me now? That was his words. So he was willing to give it up. All he wanted to do, Mike, was satisfy that hunger. And that's all he could think of. It's a lot of things we know, but do we do it?
I think that he did exactly like a lot of us do today. He made a choice.
He made a choice.
He made a wrong choice, but we make those same mistakes.
And that's what I said at the beginning of this lesson. Every day we have to make choices. And he made the wrong one, but he knew. He knew the birthright and what it entailed. But at that moment, something else was more important. At that moment. And I know he wished he could take it back, but it was too late.
Also, I think he made a choice like a lot of us do. He thinks of right now instead of
Exactly.
He thought about just right now. He wasn't thinking about me getting the blessing. He thought about what he had
right now. That hunger and that thirst in the world, what the world had beat him down with. And all he wanted was a quick fix, some satisfaction. He wanted to feel good. He wanted to feel full. And sometimes we do that. And that's what this story is about. We sell our birthright all the time the same way he does. We are no different. A lot of times we look at the story and say, how could he do that? How could we do that? We do the same thing every day. Every day. So the principle is, regardless of what may have been intended for someone, it is your faith, it is your belief, it is your heart that dictates the outcome. And it can override it at any time. So yeah, Esau was supposed to get the birthright, but he didn't exercise faith. He didn't exercise a heart for God. He didn't exercise knowing the birthright was precious, to hold on to it no matter what. And because of that, he lost it to someone who had a heart and a passion and a desire for it. That's who's going to get it. That's who's going to get the blessing in every situation. That person that has that faith and that heart to go after it no matter what it looks like. I'm going to get this birthright.
Even if I lied, he lied, didn't he?
Yeah, but it was the heart. See, God looks at the heart. See, we keep wanting to look at it like from the flesh. That's what everybody say. Well, he got it by deceit. That's what the Father said. But we keep forgetting. Why did he deceive, though? He had a heart for God.
You have to look at it.
You have to look at it the way God did. Look at David. What did David do? David stood on the roof, looked down at a beautiful woman that belonged to another man, made a plan to get that woman and kill her husband. He had a baby by her, had the husband murdered, and he said, yet this was a man after my own heart. He looks at that.
In Jacob's case, though, and I know we didn't get there, but he's gonna be deceived as well.
Yeah.
You have to keep that in mind.
Exactly.
As he go on, he's gonna reap what he sowed.
Yeah,
So,
he is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He ain't gonna just
Yes.
He ain't gonna just walk
Yeah,
away.
the same thing happened to him.
Get to that boy.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I might not have had time to go into it, but I'm glad you brought that up. He did. So, yes. But the point is what I'm focusing on, that heart, that faith to get the blessing of God, no matter what. Yes.
So, ain't our part of our birthright of what God says we are as far as our destiny?
Yes.
So, in essence, it's our fault if we don't listen to what God say we are.
Thank you.
And don't do what he say we is.
That's
We
right.
giving our birthright away.
You giving it away.
Go and do what God
You
say.
giving it away. And somebody said that, remember Solomon, and I'm going to go there with Solomon too, the difference between David and Solomon. But somebody said that when Solomon, that when God said, what do you want me to do for you? And what did he ask for?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. And because he asked for that and didn't ask for riches, God gave him
Everything.
wisdom beyond any man and riches beyond anyone on the face of the earth. But we know that later on, he began to look at the native women around him. he had over 300 wives, and all of his wives worshiped false gods. So he was slowly pulled away from his birthright. See, it's a choice. You have it, but you make the decision whether you're going to hang to it or you're going to turn it over. And instead that he started worshiping at, I can't remember the word again with an M, but when I looked that up, it meant the destroyer. He started worshiping an idol that was a destroyer. And so that's what we do. When we give up our birthright, we start worshiping the destroyer.
I think it's important, like, to say that sometimes we, like, acknowledge that we have it, and we even live that way, but it's so easy to trade in. A lot of times we do the right things, and it's not that we forget to look to our future. We also forget to look at who we have been, and we make choices off of, like, we make a quick choice, like a permanent choice off something temporary that we give in.
Exactly.
And we forget who God calls us.
We forget who we are.
That's exactly what Esau did.
Right.
That's exactly. Just for a temporary, momentary pleasure, he gave us something that you couldn't even put a price on. But something happened in Genesis 32 and 33 with Jacob that changed his life. And even though we know later on that he too was deceived, he still, in that, you saw how he stood up and took it. He never fought against it. He never questioned it. That's why, because he had the blessing still upon him. He didn't forget. Yeah, he had to reap that, but he handled it like, he came out like gold. Look at Genesis 32. Let's go over a few pages. And something major happened in Jacob's life that changed him. Now, his mother sent Jacob away because Esau said, as soon as my dad died, I'm coming after you. He's going to kill his brother. So, yeah, it wasn't like he just rode off into the sunset and forgot about it. Oh, no. Oh, no. Now we get into the nitty gritty. Yeah, he said, I'm going to kill you. Soon as daddy died, you good as dead. So his mother sent him to go to a relative, Laban. And that word Laban means white light. See all these hidden messages in there? So whenever you're facing something, go to the light. Go to the light to get some understanding. Don't turn to your boo or whoever. Go to the light. That's right. Don't turn to your significant other. You turn to the light and get some understanding. So that's where she sent him. She sent him to the light, to Laban. But while he was on his journey, he took a whole train, a camp of people with him on his journey. He had many possessions. But something happened. And let's look at verse 22. And this is when he wrestled all night with God. All night.
We're in
Genesis 32. And we're going to start with verse 22. And to start with 24, it said, Jacob was left alone. Now he's alone in his haste to get away from his brother. And it says, and a man wrestled with him. Now we know this man was God. It came in the form of an angel. Until the break of dawn, he wrestled with God all night. How do we wrestle with God today? Meditation. Like we did here. Turn them lights off. Turn that, radio off and put on some calming spiritual music that's going to take you to another place. It said he did that all night. And the angel did not prevail against him. And the angel Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. See, Jacob was all about the blessings of God. He had the birthright. He still had it. And he knew it. So because he knew it, because he knew what he was, he said, I'm not going to let you go until you give me this blessing. He never forgot who he was, even fleeing from his brother who he feared. But he knew he was a part of the blessing. And so the angel said to him, what is your name? He said, Jacob, in verse 28. He said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. See what I'm saying? He struggled with God. He struggled with men. How many of us are struggling with men right now in some kind of form or fashion? Whether it's in a relationship, whether it's co-workers, whether it's relatives, or you prevailing against that. That's what the birthright will do for you. When you understand that nothing that comes your way will deter you. You will prevail because you know who you are. You know what you have. And he is not going to refuse to be blessed. How many of us say, Lord, I refuse to not be blessed in this situation? We think we can't talk to God like that because we don't know our birthright. But when you do, you can, because you know it's tied to it. They're connected. Birthright, blessing.
And you know what's so good about that is that Jacob, he was injured. But most of the time we get injured like that, we give up, right?
Shoot, he held on. Injured his thigh.
Yeah,
and they said he walked with a limp after that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He did not give up.
He didn't give
if
up.
that happened to someone else, we through.
So, okay,
We done.
you win.
Yeah.
This is a lesson for us, saints. We have to demand the blessing. We see it here. It's biblical. He would not let God go. And God changed his name from Jacob to Israel. So Jacob represented the man. Israel represented the spiritual man. He had took him to another place. But this is what got me. Look at verse 30. This blew me away. It says, so Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. He named that place Peniel. So I looked up that word Peniel, and it means just what it said. Meeting God. Face to face. And in one translation it said mouth to mouth. You know, speaking to one another. Face to face. But have any of you ever heard of, now, because the first thing I thought of when I saw pineal, I thought of the pineal gland. Have anybody ever heard of the pineal gland? Kendall, what do you know about the pineal gland?
It's a place in your brain that releases toxins when you drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is most active when you're born, and it's most active when you die.
And it's the place where you have the highest spiritual experiences.
That's what I heard. Yeah. That's what I heard.
It's called the third eye. Remember, he said your eye is the lamp of the body. He didn't say your physical eyes. He said your eyes single. That's what he's talking about. And if I hadn't been reading all the other belief systems, I would never have known what that was. But as soon as I saw that, that's exactly what that is. It's the highest spiritual. He was taken to a level beyond where he had ever gone before, basically. And that's obvious if you're saying you were face to face with God. And because of that, he had a new name, a spiritual name that God gave him, because he reached that pinnacle.
You know, regarding the name, sometimes it's good if we change our You notice in the Bible that.
Yeah, we did that when we first started. Remember, everybody had a spiritual name? But it is, and the name has to mean something to you. Sometimes God would give you a name, and when you focus on that name, you remember who you are. That's why my name helps me, because, again, John always tells me, he said, who am I talking to? Am I talking to Polaris? Or am I talking to Donna? You know, he still does that. But see, that's good that he does that, because he recognizes that there are two parts of me. There are two parts of all of you. And so if you give yourself or allow God to give you that name, you can focus on that and say, I do have a nature that's higher than this physical body. That pineal is meant to be a real place inside of each and every one of you. Each and every one of us has this place where we can meet God face to face in meditation. I mean, in meditation, I've shared with you 2 times. He showed me some remarkable things. I know I was lifted to another place because I saw things I had never seen before. And it's a special gland that sits at the center of the brain. It's called the pineal gland. And in ancient cultures, it was known as the third eye. And it has a special relationship to light. That's why they call it pineal gland. So that blew me away, because I never had noticed that before. So don't think that this experience that we're talking about tonight is where you meet God face to face is going to happen overnight. Now, it can. I'm not saying it can't, because God can do anything. But Jacob had a rough journey. His life wasn't always easy. He had trial after trial after trial. But this lesson tonight is about when you know the birthright and you know you have the blessing of God upon you, it doesn't matter what comes in your life. I don't care what it is. You always will demand the blessing because you know it is tied to the birthright. Remember the story of David and Solomon, and God wanted them to build a temple? Who did he allow to build the temple at that time?
Solomon.
Why did he not allow David to build it? Anybody remember?
Too much blood on him.
He said, because you are a man of war. See, we can't build temples inside of us when we're warring, when we have a combative spirit, when we haven't reconciled those two natures within us. They're still battling one another. He said, you can't build my temple being a man or a woman of war. But he said, Solomon will build my temple. Solomon. What does that mean? Peace. Solomon at that time desired God more than anything. And that's why he was allowed to build God's temple. It's the same way today. You are the temple of God. You're supposed to be building something great and majestic and mighty for God to dwell in you. But if you are a person of war and your mind is double-minded and your mind can't concentrate and your mind is all tied up in the world, he said, you can't build a dwelling place for me to reside in. And that's why you have troubles. That's why you don't have peace. That's why you're stressed, because you are a man, a woman of war. Now, let's go to, and I am going to get to the birthright, I promise. It's the very next page. I'm at the bottom of this one. Gotta know. I wanted to see something though. 1 Kings, and then we're going to go into the birthrights. And you know this, but now we're going to break them down. 1 Kings 10 and 14. And I'm going to show you what can easily come between you and God. And it happened to Solomon. Something came between Solomon and God that affected his birthright. 1 Kings 10 and 14. Let's read this. Now, Solomon's great wealth is the title of this. It said, the weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly, not, once every 10 years or 20 years. Every year, the wealth of gold that came to Solomon was 666 talents of gold. And then it goes on and talks about the traveling merchants, the income of traders from all the kings of Arabia, from the governors of the country. And it talks about all these 200 large shields of hammered gold. But I want you to go back to 14. It said, did anybody pick up anything about that verse that just kind of jumped out at you? The weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly, 666 talents of gold. 666. Didn't it say that was going to be the downfall? It said 666 was a man's number. Wealth, materialism. Anytime that comes between you and God, that's what caused Solomon to lose his birthright, his wealth. The thing that God blessed him with became the thing that separated him from his birthright. So what does that tell us? When God blesses you materially, please do not let that become your God. Do not let that become your focus. Yeah, he'll give it to you, but it can still come between you and he. It's all about that heart again. Besides wealth, is your heart attached to God? Besides that big house, that big car, all those fancy clothes, is your heart still attached to God? That's what he looks for. So what does our inheritance consist of? I'm glad you asked me that question. Let's look at what it doesn't consist of first, and then we'll go to all of them. And we're going to go through them quickly. It won't take long. Let's look at Luke 12. Just so we'll get an understanding of an inheritance. So when you leave here tonight, you're going to know what your birthright is, what you are entitled to. And the birthright is just those things, but attached to it is infinite blessings. Luke 12, verse 13. The parable of the rich fool. Then one from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Jesus said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you? Take heed and beware of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possessed." So let's make that straight. Your inheritance has nothing to do with the abundance of the things you possess. He went into prayer. You could say that anytime you ask Jesus to do something for you. He went into prayer and asked God to make somebody else divide the inheritance with them. He said, "That's not what I'm here for. I don't answer prayer like that." He said, "That's greed, and that is not a part of the birthright." So we got that? It does not consist of the abundance of the things you have.
It's amazing. That's in my sermon. That's scripture.
Is it? Your first birthright. Number one, peace. John 14:27. You can't put a price on it. He said, "My peace I give to you." That's your first birthright. If you are not living in peace today, you sold your birthright. You have to live in peace. Okay? Number two comes from John 14:12. I'm just going to read these quickly if you want to write them down. He said, greater miracles than these I have done, you will do. Miracles is your birthright. And you can only perform miracles when you are in the light. You can't see them in the dark. You can't see them when you're worried. You can't see them only in the light. Greater miracles. That's your birthright. We should be seeing miracles. We should be performing miracles. Now, did he not say that? Okay, I want to make sure. Malachi 4:2 said, God came to you with healing in his wings. Healed. That's a birthright. We should never be sick. Now, see, some people say, no, now you're going a little bit too far. That's your birthright. You can believe it or you don't have to believe it. Because sickness comes from things that we cause through our stress, through our anxiety, and a multitude of other things. But if you have faith and know that you are a possessor of the birthright, that's a part of it. Healing. That same gentleman that I told you about who witnessed the woman's tumor disappear, the same thing happened to him. He went in for a checkup and had a tumor inside of his body that shouldn't have been there. He said, now I go all over the world teaching this. He said, I have to learn how to apply what I teach. See, he didn't know it was going to happen to him, but it did. He did go to the doctor. He said, the doctor said, you have to get this tumor out of you. He said, doctor, will you give me 2 to 3 weeks? He said, and then I'll come back in. And in them 2 to 3 weeks, he concentrated on his birthright. He concentrated on what he knew to be true about his body. He knew that God didn't see that tumor. He knew that God saw him complete, healthy, and whole and healed. And that's how he saw himself. So he went in and got prepped for the surgery because he did have doubts. He honestly said, I did. He said, but those 3 weeks, I focused only on health. And y'all know the story. The doctor said there wasn't nothing for them to take out. These are true stories. But you got to believe it. That's your birthright. Healing. How many of you have ever tried to heal yourself?
Yeah.
Good. That's something we should be doing all the time. That's a part of your birthright. John 10:10 and 17:10. What about that one? I have come that you may have life and life more abundantly. Abundance. That is your birthright. He came so that you may have that. What about John 14:10 and 16? That's power, but I want to read that. John 14:10. He says, do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I speak to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does the works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves. His power that he has with the Father. He say, I'm in the Father is in me. Okay, where is he at? In you. You have the power. The authority that God gave his Son, he also gave to you. That's your birthright. Power. The power of the Father is yours. Luke 10:19. I have given you authority. That's your next birthright. Authority. He says what? To tread on serpents. To heal. You're supposed to be doing that. We always talking about the enemy doing this. He said you tread on the enemy. The enemy is under your feet, not all up in your head talking to you. Under your feet. That is your birthright. If you're not doing any of them things because you didn't know, now you know. When you say you know better,
Do better.
you do better, right? And then the last one, and this is the most amazing, Ecclesiastes 3:11. He said, he has placed eternity in your hearts. Eternal. That means you are not flesh. You are spirit. You have always dwelt with the Father. That's how he sees you. He has placed eternity in your heart. So how would a person who believes that he is an eternal being, how would you act? Would you fear death? Would you fear sickness? Would you fear because the bill can't get paid? See, those are only temporary things. That is your birthright. So, do we have them? Number 1, peace. Number 2, miracles. Number 3, healing. Number 4, abundance. Number 5, power. Number 6, authority. And number 7, eternity. 7. I didn't even realize it was 7. Perfect number, isn't it? Those are your 7 birthrights. And if you are operating in those, the rest automatically come. These are not blessings. These are birthrights. The blessings are tied to that. Amen?
Amen.
That's my lesson.
It's so amazing that I sit here and listen, and about 4 of those scriptures.
You got
4, you say 4 scriptures. Now, that's amazing. You have no idea where I'm coming from, where I'm going. I have no idea what you're going to learn.
That's the spirit.
I was just telling you, that's what I read today. The whole scripture is what I read.
Which one?
That 12, Luke 10. Luke 10,
Luke is what I read this morning.
The authority to tread.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's part of your birthright.
Yep.